Welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod. Greetings, welcome. We are a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. I am your ready for a cookie captain, Myrriah Gossett. On view screen we have
Clyde Haynes live from Comic-Con.
And sibling rivalry, Paul Satachet.
our beloved Paul holding it down for us.
Holding it down. That's what I do.
Yes, you are doing the Lord's work for us today. We are covering the 6th episode of season 2 of Strange New Worlds, as well as a couple of updates from here at Comic-Con. The episode today is Lost in Translation, which is directed by Dan Liu and written by Onitro Johnson and David Reed. But first, just a couple of reminders, and we'll just say up top, Clyde and I are recording this live. I'm literally out on a street corner right now, just hustling some Star Trek stuff.
And I am live in the Energized Lounge right here in San Diego, surrounded by incredible Star Trek fans. It's amazing. I mean, there is cosplay, there is stuff. You'll see pictures. Myrriah and I will post pictures, but it's amazing. So not the most ideal settings, but an amazing setting nonetheless.
And I am being responsible and recording from the quietude of my home that is nowhere near Comic-Con and a little full of sorrow. The same way George Kirk is full of sorrow about James Kirk's success. Anyway, let's go.
But you can find links to everything, our show at StarTrekPod.co. Paul, can you tell folks how else they can support the podcast?
Yeah, you guys could subscribe to Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. As I said, all links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you guys love our content and want to support us on Patreon for just $2 per episode, consider that at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
And Clyde, how can people engage in the chat with us today?
Well, if you're here in San Diego, stop by, ask us a question, we'll answer it live. But if you happen not to be in San Diego, then just type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital Pod in your chat, and we will answer your question live right here on the pod.
Indeed. Okay, so a couple of updates. A lot of the big Star Trek stuff is happening later this weekend. I'm gonna try my best to get into Hall H. TBD if that shall happen. Today, Clyde and I had our panel talking about our top 10 episodes we think it takes to get someone into Star Trek. So we will be publishing those lists on our social media channels, and I think we'll do a couple of episodes because we want to get Paul's list as well. So Paul, start pondering, because I think this shall be an episode we will be doing in the future.
So I'm allowed to say, Beverly in the space, in the Ghost.
You can say whatever you want. It's your top 10 list.
Spoiler alert, someone on our panel actually chose the Peanut Hamper episode as one of their favorite top 10 Star Trek episodes.
It was totally not us. We did not pick the Peanut Hamper episode, but Peanut Hamper did make an appearance at our panel. So it would not be a panel with us without that. But yeah, we're definitely going to share that. But I think it might be time for us to accidentally punch a first officer in the face, perhaps, and get into some. Of course, it's time for some hot freaks. Paul, what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was fun. I thought there was a part of me that goes like, oh, you know what this kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of TNG, where like around season 4 or 5, they just went on like individual character adventures, and this is definitely a Uhura adventure. And it's like when I look into that context, I go like, okay, right now I'm missing like an adventure episode, like something with a lot of like a Gorn fighting episode, something that requires ships and Pike to go fire photons. I'm wanting that right now, but I feel like this episode was like as a character episode. It had some great moments. It had some like fan service that I thought was like great, and I love there's a word in German, which I don't know, because I have it off the dome, but like it's basically having a punchable face, and I think the current Kirk has a punchable face. Because I was going like, oh, you know, yeah, yeah. There you go. Justice for George Kirk. Justice for George Kirk.
Justice for George Kirk. Sam Kirk, all of the Kirk brothers. Clyde, what was your hot freak?
Look, I love this episode, and that's a lot because I'm Myrriah. You know, I'm not really a horror guy, so this had definitely a bit of a horror take to it. But Myrriah, you were here when I was watching the episode. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I really enjoyed everything, the action, the reveal. I thought it was a great episode for Uhura. I mean, and by the end of the episode, I was thinking, you know, this guy is still not necessarily my Kirk, but I like him. I would love it if he was his own separate character. And I'm kind of feeling the whole Kirk, Jim Lon kind of romance. I can feel that. But yeah, I dug this episode. I thought it was really interesting, and in perfect Star Trek fashion, you're doing something that you think is harmless, and yet there it is. It's terrorizing a whole race, and you got to do the right thing. So I really enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, same. I was like, oh, I think they wrote this for me. You had zombies, you had horror elements. It's a mystery adventure with Uhura, and I'm probably he's really growing on me. I'm enjoying this Kirk. I don't know if he is my Kirk yet, but I have to say, I think Wesley gave a really incredible performance in this episode. Sorry, a pedicab just went by. So there's a bunch of loud music, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think Celia gave an incredible performance this episode, and I'm really excited to re-watch it. Yeah, I had a great time. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to dive in. Well, first, I wanted to point out. So, in this particular episode, they go over to the Bassard Nebula, or they go to extract Bassard in the Banner Nebula, which is actually named after Melissa Navia, who plays Ortegas. It's named after her husband, who unfortunately passed away in December of 2021. So I thought that was a really sweet way for them to honor his memory. I feel like Trek does a really great job of finding subtle ways to sort of like call these moments out and find ways to kind of put these things together. Huh?
Say thank you to everyone involved. Say thank you. It's very sweet.
Yeah. It's lovely. Sorry, I'm going to turn up my headphone volume so I can hear you guys over the traffic. I wanted to also ask you guys, so starting out, what did you think of that Spock Apple scene with their little Schrodinger's cat metaphor about their relationship? What are y'all feeling about the Spock and Chapel situation right now?
Well, I'll jump in and say I thought it was rich with double entendre. You had this, I thought it was sweet and subtle, but also nuanced. And you've got two people who seemingly are just playing chess with a bit of a kind of a grin, but it's so much more meaningful. Everything from the way he's playing and the way he's talking to her and the way she's responding, into the fact that when Uhura comes over, Jim says, you distracted your friend, right? Like he was like 2 moves away from winning, and then you distracted him. Now he's in trouble. I thought that too was this great metaphor of how really for Spock, he's in it, he's focused, he's logical, but this idea of love can get him distracted. So I was like, interesting foreshadowing. But I kind of really liked what that was saying overall.
Like for me, like I was going like, they finally hook up, and then like the conversation is, hey, let's keep it cash. I'm like, there's some damage there.
I was like, ooh, people who do not want to commit.
It is great television, but I'm like going like, oh, I don't know, like like you've been hot and heavy for each other, like with those looks from afar, like
so many glances.
Oh my god, oh you almost died, I gotta give you CPR, I gotta blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden like yeah, let's not tell anyone. I'm like, that's rough. And I understand
It's
it,
still
and
so early, though. It's like, do you really want to report this relationship this early in the situationship?
You haven't even had a chance to really. I mean, I hate to say define the relationship, but you've basically had one interaction, like
100%.
one interaction. Like even this conversation is early. Like you have no idea what it is.
Well, I'm
Um,
just saying with my friend Worf, like he hooked up with a girl once in the holodeck, and he was ready to marry her. That's what commitment looks like, baby. That was Klingon style, baby.
Klingon
It,
style.
and they could do a Gundam style, but with the but like
Uh,
but like yeah, I'm not saying it's just on Chapel's part. It's on Spock's part too. Spock is like going like I don't really know what I want kind of thing. I'm putting this out because there's a formality that as like as someone who follows rules I do, but like it's it's good drama. But when I look at that relationship, and maybe because I know the future, unless this isn't canon, I go like, it ain't gonna work out.
well, I think also anytime you have the phrase like, well, what is this, right? Like, so Spock's like, if this is something, we should report it. If it's something, I feel like that's always somebody fishing for like, well, what does this relationship mean to you? Are you on the same page? Which almost always means we're not on the same
that's a good
page.
point.
And it's kind of like, it's like, well, I don't want you to know that it means more to me. So let's just keep it cash when neither one of you really want to keep it cash. And so I'm like, okay, hijinks are about to ensue. So, and probably, as you said, Paul, we know that there's not a Spock Chapel wedding in the future. So we'll see how this unfolds.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like I do look at it and go like, oh, is it because like I feel like I don't really relate to Klingons in general, but that said, like I from dating my wife to getting married was 4 months, and I go like, am I a Worf? Am I a Worf?
I think
Eh,
you're a Worf, Paul. It took me 9 years to marry my now spouse.
and so you're a Chapel.
I am a
18
Chapel.
months. But
18 months.
but we were friends for 3 years before that, but different.
Yes. So maybe I look at that and go like, oh, maybe this is all about my baggage.
Putting some personal feelings on this ship here, this
Yeah.
relationship on the show.
Projecting, are you, Paul? Just a little
I'm just
bit.
yeah, obviously.
I do want
You go, Myrriah.
I oh yeah, I was gonna say I did want to. Did you have anything else? Because I wanted to shift gears over to Uhura and Hemmer, who I think is the other sort of big relationship we explore in this episode. Is sort of how that friendship really impacted her, along with his death, and the fact that these beings that are living in the nebula in the Bassard as they're collecting it. Um, we're using specifically these memories of her family and of Hemmer. And to me, that's really interesting that those were the two memories that were so closely linked to her sort of emotional core as a character right now. And I made a comment when I was watching. I was like, "Oh, I'm glad we all watch YouTube tutorials to figure out how to do something that her and Hemmer sort of made for themselves." But yeah, what did y'all think of? We got a reprise of that character. Those were all
Mhm.
new scenes. They weren't things we'd seen before, so I loved getting to kind of see some of this. And we got a zombie version of Hemmer, which was really
Mariah
creepy
based.
and
It's
amazing.
Mariah
Oh
based.
yeah. The minute that was on screen, I was like, "Oh, they made this for me. Thank you."
Before the credits too. It was before the credits. Oh, Mariah is salivating. Oh,
I was so I mean, I already saw the director name, and he's done a ton of the Walking Dead episodes.
mhm.
So as soon as I saw his name and then I saw that image before the credits even started, I went, "Oh, thank you so much for this."
Yeah.
I was sitting here in the lounge watching it, and I turned to Mariah and I go, "You love this episode, didn't you?" And she just nodded her head. I was like, "Yep, I knew it.
Indeed,
It
I
didn't
did.
take me long at all. It did not take
He
me
was
long
like,
at
"I
all."
can clock this hot freak from a mile away and it hasn't even started."
Yep.
Uh,
No, I'll jump in and say the whole Himmer plot to me was borderline brilliance because really what we're talking about is we saw Himmer pass last season, and it was this moment, and then we never really talk about it again. And the thing about it is, like, I struggle with death a little bit, and kind of having these moments. The idea that here we are midway through the next season and this stuff is actually bubbling up makes so much sense, right? And not just with Uhura, but also Una. And that was a big thing for me because I get it. Like, as great as Paley is, you want to befriend her. She's vivacious and engaging and is wonderful. And all you're really thinking of is you're not Hemmer, right? That was my friend.
Yeah,
You're
we're all
stepping in
kind
to
of
replace
Una
her.
in this situation, right?
Yeah. And so that was interesting. And I feel like even the way you think about how we took it, we accepted Paley really, really quickly, even on the pod, right? When she showed up, we were all like, I love her. She's great. She's wonderful. But what you're talking about is replacing somebody that was a dear friend to you, right? And for Uhura, what we're really looking at is a mentor. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love Strange New Worlds so much, is that when you think about what we've seen of Uhura, we've never seen this before. We've never really seen this story of her being mentored and coached and that relationship. So the fact that this would bubble up and we kind of got hey, I know we talked about this 6-7 episodes ago, but that's kind of how death is. It's not just like, oh, at the end of a 45-minute episode, it's over and we never think about it again. Borderline brilliant way to bring this back up, and we got to see him again. So I was all for this. I thought it was great.
Like for me, like I don't think I was a Hemmer fan, and not because of anything the actor did, or I just think there wasn't a lot of time for him. It was only like there were 2 episodes, right? There was one where he broke his arm and Uhura got to hang out,
Yeah, that's
and
fair.
and then there was like, oh, I'm going to jump off into the abyss and die because I got Gorn in me episode, right? Those were the 2 big ones where he had his moments, and like I feel like if this were like in season, if I had seen another episode where Hemmer and Ahura really had a connection, I would have felt more here. But because I didn't, I go like, oh, okay, well, she's mourning, but it wasn't a visceral thing for me. Like I couldn't really go like, oh, it's I go like, oh, well, people die. I'm a little like Kirk that way, you know. But like, well,
Which is interesting because it's kind of a big foreshadow, right, for how Kirk ultimately doesn't deal well with death either once we get to some of the
sure.
movies. So I think it's like interesting that he's providing counsel in this moment when there's like he's essentially not going to take his own advice in the future. So it was kind of a fun setup. I enjoyed some of the foreshadowing.
Like I think what Kirk does is like very few people people die all the time under Kirk. Let's get that clear.
That is also
Red
true.
shirts do not make it off the planet.
That's right. But
Red shirts
It's a
galore.
one-way trip.
but his circle doesn't get hurt, and that's the problem. Like Kirk's circle doesn't
Right.
get hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think like so it fits, and this actually fits with something I was going to bring up. I go like, oh, where I think I understand what's making me have resistance to this Kirk. And like in Pine, in Shatner, like they're both on some level campy characters. Like Pine is like sometimes overtly like pew pew firefighter. Are they in the Kobayashi Maru? Like he's and Kirk for all of it is like this stud slash goofball. Like he's not goofy, but like you go like, oh, he's the guy. Whereas like this Kirk is like playing it in such a straight way that it knocks me out a little bit because like I agree his performance was great. His performance was great. Like I think he did nothing wrong. But I feel like, oh, but this is it. This is why you know uh, I'm having a little issue with him because I can't get over that you're not funny hump.
See, I did find him kind of funny and charming because, like, from the jump, that little interaction at the bar where he's
Mhm.
like, I'm not hitting of is, and it's like such a Kirk way to get an interaction started for me. And then I thought the cookie scene was also kind of cute. I don't know. He's growing on me. I
Mhm.
think obviously a lot faster than he is for you. But I enjoyed the performance, and I feel like I think especially in the interactions with Sam, like the brother scenes were some of my favorite scenes in this episode, besides the ones between Kirk and Uhura, because I really believed that sibling rivalry there, and I thought it was like I was waiting for Kirk to say, for James Kirk to say to Sam, like, oh, I'm also really like proud of you, when Sam is being like, yes, like you've earned it, you've done all these things, look at these accolades. And then I felt like he was just waiting for his brother to be like, yeah, you've also done some really great things, and it never comes. And I was like, this is such sibling shit, and I love it.
Yeah, I think that's part of some of the best things about this is that I really do believe and see that they're brothers. And it almost feels as though they casted Sam and then there was a chemistry read with someone. It's like, oh, will you believe that they're brothers? I do believe they're brothers. I think Wesley's doing a bang up job. I love the interactions. I love how he portrayed it. I really, really liked him. To Myrriah's point, though, all that being said, I don't know that it felt very Kirk-esque to me, right? Like, and that's where I'm balanced. Like, great actor, wonderful performance, loved everything he did, but is it Kirk, right? If you had named him, Jim, Evans, right? Like, and he was Lieutenant Commander Jim Evans, I was like, that works. He's a great character. I like him. I want to know more about him, right? That's my only hiccup. But I did really like every time they were on scene and their dynamics and things they were talking about. I was like, "Yep, I'm in it. I'm leaned in. It's all of that, But I wonder if I'm gonna get there, right? So I'm allowing myself to be in the process, and we'll see if I get there.
That's fair. I want to jump over to sort of the B plot. So we have Una and Pelia hanging out on this star base, the gas station in space, as they call it, trying to work on these repairs. And we sort of get into the nitty gritty of their relationship. And I think, Una is a bit of a stand-in, I think, for viewers in some ways, where it's like, oh, like I miss this character, for some people at least. And then, I thought it was the grade thing was hilarious. The fact that Una got a C on something, so funny to me. But I really enjoyed kind of seeing these two. They're two really phenomenal actors in in this show and outside of the show. So it was just really fun to watch them interact in that like polar opposite chemistry that the two of them had. I really enjoyed watching their scenes.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Space Hippie. I'm a big fan of Una.
Oh my gosh, Space Hippie, such a great line.
Yeah, no, like when did you even have time to eat? Perfect straight man line.
Well, I think the other thing I loved here about Pelia in general is that she breaks concept, right? Like, she's looking at Una, and so the way she treats Una and the way she responds to Hemmer, I think was incredible. She looks at Una and is like, you got a C. You deserve that C. Like, we think of Una as being incredible, almost near perfect, and she was like, you're not. And then she goes, Hemmer, one of my best students. And then she goes, I'm just saying that because he died. He was okay.
Was like,
that was so good. That was so good.
So great.
I was like, so cutting. Such a great character line.
And it's one of those things that I felt like not only did it ring true, but it makes me like her so much more as a character. And I'm like, I'm really in. Just don't let's not keep killing engineers at the end of every season. So don't do that. Yeah. But I'm loving. I love the realness of that, of what she brought to the table.
Like I think what she does really well is she breaks through the illusion. Right? She's a truth teller. Like she goes like, hey, 100%. This is all bullshit, by the way. It's all like don't get caught up in this. Like I've been around since the Stone Ages or whatever, how long she's been around. Like it's like it all comes and goes. Just calm down. I'll get to it.
Now the line that Una fires back at her though is like, you've been in Starfleet longer than I've been alive, and yet I outrank you. And Pelia basically had to walk away. I was like, ooh, come back to that later. Please tell me more about what happened there. I thought that the whole dynamic between both of them was just amazing.
Yeah, I also I was excited to watch them kind of investigate the station together, and I thought it was I thought we were going to get some more jump scares on the station because it was so like creepy and dark and everything. But then we get to poor Romano, who just gets shoved out, like blown out of the ship. And that was maybe the only thing I was like, I'm a big horror fan, but I don't love having to watch like oversaturation of death. Like I think it can be more creative when you find creative ways to tell me the impact of the death without me having to see the death. And like the long take of watching that poor man's
I thought
body
that was
freeze in
hilarious.
space.
I thought it was hilarious. I was going like, Dan Lou just decide. It's not only that, like, it's a VFX shot, right?
Oh yeah,
they had to spend money on it.
So much money.
And then somebody goes like, "Oh, by the way, we're gonna watch him float into space." Like, what was his line? His only line is basically, "Is this real? Is this real? Ramon, that's my name. Is this real?" That's all. But he gets the close-up cameo VFX. Like, I'm frozen in space. Ah! Hilarious.
I mean, the whole frozen in space and the dying as you float away. It's a nice shot, right? Like, did we really need it? I don't know.
I mean, we also just got it with in Picard when we watched oh my gosh, guys, Amanda Palmer's character like float into space and then get shattered into a million pieces. Like we love watching people freeze in space.
That's true.
Vedic,
you're right.
Vedic.
Yeah. But like it was also like stylistically they did that long shot with like at the very end too. So I feel like it's a directorial, to play the long moment, So I get it. I thought it was a choice. I thought it was hilarious. I thought you would like it, Myrriah, but obviously no.
I mean, like it just felt a little. It was like 2 seconds too long. I would have just like cut it just a little bit.
Too many notes. It's like.
I think Myrriah, for our panel, I've been going back and watching a lot of Star Trek, and I was watching a lot of the Kelvin verse because I was just enjoying it. And I feel like over the past week, I've seen a lot of bodies blown out into the space, just a lot of bodies. And so for me, it was like, oh, it's another one.
Well,
like blast shattered and people sucked out into space.
Like what's funny is like the way that Abrams did that in Star Trek, his Star Trek. It goes like, oh, people love this shot, so every single movie after it has like, oh no, it's the Avenger or the Vengeance, like shoot pew pew. Oh, now you're flying through the bodies into warp space, or like in 3 where they cut the Enterprise in half.
Well, we also got it earlier in this episode when the Uhura is having the dream sequence, and we see Spock and Pike pulled out into space, and I'm like, okay, hey guys,
we got it.
Vacuum sucked out.
So much death in this episode. I wanted to ask y'all what you thought about Pike in this episode, because he truly, he was like taking Uhura seriously, which I appreciated. But what do you think about, sort of Kirk and Sam and Uhura coming to this conclusion that it's this like species, it's like, we don't see a lot of like proof, although I was reading up, apparently a lot of the like science in this episode is true. So shouts to our science advisors on this show about how species will like communicate, but then also about how this particular molecule is absorbed for fuel source as well. The
deuterium,
the Bassard, the deuterium. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But yeah, what did you think of Pike's reactions to Uhura and how he sort of managed his crew in this episode?
I feel that I think he's being real soft daddy-ish. Like he's everyone I think I need him to be a little more like, dude, straighten up. Because he it's not this one episode is fine, but like throughout the season, he really has just been very nice. He's been more like a manager than a leader in some ways, and I feel like I kind of want a little bit more of a leader in this season in Pike.
I think Paul, I think what we're seeing with Pike is he's preparing his crew for his inevitable demise, right? And so it feels like he's much more of a coach than this authoritarian kind of leader.
That's pretty. I like that take. That's a good take. It's not something I considered at all.
So I think one of the things that I saw when I was looking at this is I saw the skepticism,
Mhm.
but the willing to go,
Mhm.
okay, I got to let you lead because you're going to need to lead someday. Right. And so he was like, are you sure? Like, you're fine. Like, I don't see it. And then he checked with her and he said, how sure are you? Like, how confident are you? Like, he was checking and he was like, but that's, to me, see, that's the difference between a Picard, a Kirk, a Janeway. Like, I think they would have been like, ultimately, it's my decision. I have to do it. And what he really did was he said, I'm going to let Uhura make the decision, but I will carry the responsibility. That to me was more coaching.
No,
Yeah.
I like that.
That is an interesting take, and I can definitely see that, Clyde. I think that's a good like analysis of where he's kind of going. And so in this episode, we also get him upgraded to fleet captain, although they
With the
say
little
it's temporary.
with the little circle in his little badge.
A little circle there, yeah. So, which is sorry, fixing some canon things that I know some people have been kind of complaining about how he has to eventually get to fleet captain for when he meets Kirk. So I thought that was like an interesting way for them to kind of navigate this. And I thought that Kirk and Pike had some interesting, I don't know, I guess I expected maybe more of that like meeting of the giants kind of feeling to it, and we didn't really see it, but I enjoyed what we saw as far as their interactions go, especially because like we know they didn't have a close relationship canon wise, so it's like you kind of have to toe that line of like bringing this character in, but then how he interacts.
Like Kirk and him had first Kirk saved his ass in the alternate timeline, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And he had like a conversation with Kirk. Like there should have been some La'an, like saw Kirk for a little bit, almost got murdered by hot dog eater, and and
For
she the
those
most
listening, Paul just made me almost spit out my coffee. Thank you, Paul.
and and at the even she, like the moment she sees Finn, goes James, like, but like with Pike there's no recognition at all, and that I felt like I wanted something to. I went like, oh, you're Kirk, I've heard about you, really, blah blah, something like some aspect that I thought would be pretty good, because like in the end, like and someone might correct me, but I think like he takes the Enterprise because like Pike is part of the reason why, not just because he gets like in the accident, but I think like there's something about like,
Well, the admiral that Pike is going to talk to at the end is I can't remember their name off the top of my head. I'll try to find it, but is ultimately the admiral that Kirk, I think, has to talk into letting him take the Enterprise, if I'm remembering correctly. I can fact check myself here, or someone else in the chat can, but I think that has more to do with it than, and I think I have to rewatch some TOS. I was like, I feel like there's also something with Kirk helping Pike maintain his fleet captain status even after the accident, I think is something that also happens. If I'm maybe.
To me, I think that's the question, right? And I mentioned to you this earlier, is I think the exciting part about seeing, James Kirk in Strange New Worlds is that we get this backstory of, well, how did he actually take over the Enterprise, right? There's questions about like what exactly made him such a great choice for the Enterprise, because like I don't know that we've ever really seen it. Like I feel like we've seen some things in the Kelvin verse, but when we talk about the Prime universe, like what led up to it, right? And so we get to see
I
that
know in
kind of
the
first.
mirror universe, Tiberius, like bad guy Kirk, kills Pike, so there you go Tiberius.
Well, I mean,
Justice for Tiberius.
In the Terran Empire, that's how you get control of the ship, is you kill the captain.
Yep.
But we're talking about Prime universe.
Yes, and I just I figured out how to. I found the fact that I looked up earlier. So Admiral Nagura, who Pike talks to at the end, is a character that's established in the motion picture and is who Kirk has to convince to let him take command of the Enterprise again. So not the first time. It's when he's like, I need the ship back.
Oh, when he's what's it called? When he's admiral. When Kirk's admiral and fighting V'ger. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what did you think though? Did you think? Go ahead.
I was gonna say the one thing that I had a hard time with, which I didn't believe, was when Uhura goes, "Enough with those stupid cookies." She called those cookies stupid, and I was like, "Nah, these are not replicated
Maybe
cookies."
She's just not she might not be a cookie gal. Maybe she's more of a pie or a cake person.
Yeah, but like that's cookie disrespect.
Who doesn't like cookies?
That's cookie disrespect. That like I am a cake person. Justice for cookies. Like I'm a cake person, but like I would choose cake over cookie. But like but like if you're gonna disrespect cookies, you're as crazy.
Listen. We need to be inclusive here.
Thank you.
Okay,
Clyde.
there is space for cake, for pies, for cookies,
infinite desserts, brownies, and infinite combinations.
That's
I'm
right.
just saying, no discrimination over sweets.
This Star Trek, we don't tolerate that.
I mean, if you have a replicator, replicate all of the sweets. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so I'm glad we have just divulged fully into a food podcast at this point.
It's a Substack.
We have hot dog chat. We've got dessert corner.
Myrriah, we walked through the exhibit hall. I picked up the Star Trek cookbook. I can go back and get it. We can have a whole podcast on recipes from Star Trek. I could do that. We can try and get sponsored from the Food Network and everything. We can do this. I think we can.
Okay, after the strike, we're pitching our Star Trek cooking show. What did you think, though? I did have to. I felt like I was a little rushed to get to from the way essentially Sam's like, I think it's some species communicating with you, and then they kind of jump to her putting all the pieces together, which I totally see how she could put all those pieces together like that. But I almost wanted some way for them to be like, oh, if we recalibrate the computer like this, we can then scan and find these we had no full confirmation of life forms beyond this communication. Right. And I think for me, I wanted to see some sort of double confirmation before he blew up a whole space station. But that could just be me.
But yeah, I think the point is though, like, it was Pike trusting Uhura. If she had evidence, then like Pike makes the choice. But he doesn't trust Uhura. Like, he has to completely trust her because she's the only one who sees it. And like, for example, if Uhura were overworked and completely completely
hallucinating
and hallucinating, it would happen the same way. Except now, like, Pike would have just fired, let Uhura fire on the collector. Like, like she could seriously still be like schizophrenic, like, and like there's no way to prove it otherwise.
Well, I think part of the thing that I was expecting, right? Because we frequently talk about Strange New Worlds is the closest Trek that we have today that resembles the Trek of yesterday, right? It feels more episodic, more.
This did feel very nostalgic Trek, but in a good way. Nostalgic Trek in a good way, yeah.
Right, but my expectation in nostalgic Trek is that it's an ensemble answer to the problem, right? That we get a full the team up. Yes,
you want the table talk.
Which we did kind of get with the Kirk brothers and Uhura, right? Like you're like, we have to go see Sam. Sam kind of gets this shining moment. He's like, I'm going to publish this paper.
The Clyde needs the ready room. He needs the ready room.
He wants the full table.
I want the table and the discussion, but also to your point, Myrriah, I mean, what I was expecting is that in traditional Star Trek form is that not only do they discover, hey, there's this alien, but Uhura, as the communications expert, finds a way to communicate with them in some form, right?
Yeah.
So there's this
acknowledgement a way to communicate
of them
back.
Right. So they can talk and go, and at least be able to say, hey, I'm sorry, right? And we kind of get that with the smiling Hemmer.
Yeah.
Right? But we still got no dialogue, right? Again, to your point, Paul, before we blow up the space station. Which I have to think Starfleet Command's gonna be a little not that so happy
That
about, right?
report's going to be long. It's going to be a long report.
Yeah.
No,
For
it's gonna
sure.
say, "Whoops."
Yeah. And here's the response. You know what we think about you being a fleet admiral? Whoops.
That's right. Whoops. That's right.
Easy come, easy go.
But what was interesting though, like so they're in that edge of space, and like it's great to go into Gorn territory or like whatever, but like it seems like there'd be other species who would go in and just put the gas station there and not care about these like interspecies alien, like the deuterium aliens, right?
Yeah, it's like, is there any record of other people having these symptoms that like Uhura
Hmm.
and Roman did? But I wanted to also bring up, I pointed out at some point during the episode when I was watching it, I was like, dang, these ensign quarters are maybe nicer than my house. Like,
Yeah.
just
No.
in comparison to like lower decks, I was like, oh, do ensigns not have to hang out in bunk beds on
No.
on
No.
this Enterprise?
No. It's like it's what happens when you like socialize whatever.
I mean, maybe it's all ensigns aren't created equal because I mean, Uhura is a bridge ensign where,
She was a cadet. Like she was a
Last
cadet, not
season.
6 months. Yeah, that's right.
but she was still a bridge cadet. Boimler's not really on the bridge. I mean, that's why
Well,
they got bunk
We've
beds.
seen him
'Cause-
pilot the ship. We've seen
well,
him pilot the ship
yeah, but he's not like
badly. but-
I'm just saying he's not. Boimler's not like A-team bridge
I guess
crew.
they are
like
what are they? Delta shift.
yeah,
yes.
well,
We're not talking about Alpha Shift.
we remember like Uhura. We saw her Boimler style sleeping quarters in season 1, right? With the light virus.
I mean,
Yes, that's true.
and didn't
So she got
Tilly-
upgraded because Tilly.
I mean, Tilly and Burnham shared a room. They were roommates.
Yeah, but
It wasn't bunks, but they were in the same room together for a
Burnham's a
minute.
felon, man. She's a felon.
She was also a lieutenant commander at one point. Like,
Well, I
just
don't
saying.
know. I don't know. Like it just seems a little rando here. Yeah, I hear you. Like it seems a little nepo baby-ish.
It was just really nice. So I mean, good for her. I hope she
Yeah.
enjoys it.
But you know who has really good quarters of, and I've only seen specs on it on. Yeah, that's right, Clyde. Who is it?
It's Peanut Hamper, but I've already been Peanut Hampered today in a live studio audience, so you're not getting me today. And Nicole, who's not here on the pod, but Nicole was there and saw them Peanut Hamper me on live on stage.
Well, I wasn't there.
Yes.
I wasn't
just
there. Give me
Paul
my
needs-
moment.
It's
Paul,
it's
Give me
really
my
only
moment.
it's only a surprise the first time, Paul. It's only a surprise the
Yeah.
first time.
Once a week, baby. Once a week.
Yes.
once a week. I wanted to talk about the final bar scene. I was trying to find the name of the song the jazz band was playing. It sounded so familiar. I haven't been able to find it. If anyone knows, I will try to figure it out and post it on social. But I really loved that little final shot. It was like such a nice little, I don't know, it was a warm and fuzzy moment, I feel like, for fans to see to see Spock and Uhura and Kirk at a table. And I was like, oh, the handshake to launch 1,000 ships,
Yeah.
between Spock and Kirk. But I really enjoyed it. I was surprised we didn't get a little moment with La'an at the end in the bar with Kirk, something situation, but I don't know if they're gonna pursue that more than just a side glance, perpetual head romance moment. But what did you think about that last scene?
I thought the last scene was great. I thought what was really funny was like the whole like George what you call it, George being messy with his crumbs was set up so that like George can be and Spock goes frustrating.
Yes.
It's just set up for so I thought that was hilarious. I think it was just fan service, a long shot fan service, right? Like, hey, just these guys are gonna be important.
And I ate it up. I loved it.
So I'll say one. Star Trek has some of the best bars ever. Like these are bars I'd be happy to hang out with.
Truly.
Like I just every
Great
time
lounges.
the lounges on these ships are just phenomenal. So kudos in general. Like I've never really been like, hey, I want to go hang out at a bar guy, but I would hang out at these bars all the time. Like I get it. And in that context of hanging out, relaxing a little bit, I thought this was an amazing scene because I think inside the Kelvin verse, we've seen how the Spock, Kirk, Uhura dynamic begins, but in the Prime universe, we haven't. We haven't really seen like we're introduced and they're already a team, and this is like the beginning. So it's kind of like I don't want to really call it a meet cute, but it is a, we're all looking. It was like, oh my goodness, this is how it began, right? This is how these three who will end up as a critical three, like this is where it started. And so to me, this is a pretty significant, important moment in the Star Trek kind of universe and the story, the timeline. This is an important part that I don't know that has been told again in the Prime universe ever before. And so that meeting, really important.
Yeah, and I thought they let it linger well and kind of gave it that breathing room. It was a really nice final shot. And to Chupi's point, Spock picks up the glass that Sam left at the end there. Um, it was it was sweet. It was nice. I guess we will see what develops with La'an and Kirk as it goes forward, but I thought her interactions with him were fairly believable as far as her sort of like, it's like a weird crush but it's like a crush on someone who doesn't exist. It's trying to figure out if that person does actually exist, right? Which is complicated. And I thought Christina Chong played it really well.
I know, like in the trailer, right? Like in the trailer for this season, there's a bit where Una and like Una and Laan are in the transporter room.
Yeah, and she's
Kirk,
like, "You're making me sweat." Yeah.
that's right. It goes like, "Oh, is there a vibe? It's no vibe."
Mm-hmm.
So we have that to look forward to.
I feel like with Lon, it's a lot like having a crush on an actor or actress who plays a character. Like, so you're like, oh
Right.
man, I love this, right? And then you meet them and you're trying to figure out how much of who they are is relative to who I think they are, right? This character. And I think that's the thing because, I'll call it Mirror Jim was very different, right? His brother died, like he was in a war, he appreciated things, like it was a very different. And she's trying to figure out how much of his core character is actually true. That person that I, felt
Connected to.
attracted to, yeah, connected to.
Yeah,
Perfect word,
yeah,
Paul.
and
How much of that is real?
I know how to do that too. They go to 10 Ford or whatever it's called on the Enterprise and they order hot dogs.
There it goes. As PW Gregory says, having a crush on someone that doesn't exist, that's every day of the week. I think that's a lot of people who have fandoms. Did you? We're gonna kind of keep it a little tight this evening because we're gonna try to make a panel around 8 o'clock. We shall see if I can truck it across town in that time frame. Best of luck to my feet. But is there anything else that you want to dive into on this episode? And we can definitely leave some space, I think, next week to talk a little bit more about it as well. Next week is our crossover episode. Very excited about it. So I think we'll have lots to say next week. But Paul, Clyde, anything you wanted to add about
I'm
this
good.
particular episode?
I want to I want to see you make it to your panel.
We shall see.
That's right. Warp factor.
Warp
9.
factor 10.
I'll just say this. Look, I thought this was a great episode. And it wasn't quite what I expected to start. So I didn't think I was gonna love it, but I actually did love it. And I like where we're going in this season. And I also thought it was great that we got yet another log from another character. I'm digging this. So yeah, can't wait till next week.
Agreed.
Cool.
Yeah, I love seeing. I hope we get more. I hope we get more too. That isn't just about trauma. I'm ready for some Uhura joy. I'm ready for some Uhura joy in my life. So, which I feel like we got appreciated that.
Myrriah, when we were doing the panel today, I was amazed at how many people talked about episodes that were fun, and happy episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I think in this season, I don't know that we've had a happy episode, right? Like a silly, fun, kind of campy, goofy episode. And I know it's short. I know we don't have 22 episodes or 23 or anything like that, but I would love a a more fun episode.
Yeah, I'm ready for like our we had the Elysian Kingdom last season, which was sad at a lot of cores, but was really fun to watch. So, we shall see where it goes. Okay, y'all, that is it for the pod this week. More content next week on Thursday at our normal time. We will also be talking about anything else that pops up at Comic-Con. I know Clyde and I are going to put together some little mini-sodes that will drop over. Really excited. We're really excited for next week. And I think so. Rumor is that they're going to drop the crossover episode early. I'm sorry, a motorcycle literally just pulled up. It's telling me to wrap it up. Okay, now it's gone. Okay, I think they're dropping the episode early, so keep an eye on that on Paramount Plus. Okay, as always, support the writers, support SAG in their strike. You can in our show notes on how to do that. We appreciate them, and none of the things we talk about can happen without them. We will see you all next week. Thank you to Karen helping us out on Twitter. We also are back on Instagram, so you can check that out. Until next time, y'all, live long and prosper.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right.